What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the NLL Flash. My name is Tino Fera. Week 1 is in the books, and oh baby, did it ever impress. And we are getting ready to look ahead to week number 2 with another clean slate of games. But before we get there and before we introduce our guest for this week's episode, let's tell you about week 1 and what happened. Last Friday night, the regular season kicked off with Halifax playing host to Philadelphia. And let me tell you something, the vibes between these two benches could not have been more different. The Thunderbirds started hot, and oh boy, did they stay hot. Plus, Ryan Benesh and Randy Stotts each put up 7 points in their debuts, en route to an 18-8 victory. Similarly, the Rock kept their promise on guaranteed win night by absolutely thumping the Warriors 19-8. Rochester upset Georgia with a second-half comeback victory. Connor Fields blew the doors off in his very first game with the Nighthawks, 10 points. Wow, welcome to Rochester, Connor Fields. In the San Diego versus New York matchup, the Seals stopped a fourth quarter surge by the Riptide, with the Seals coming out on top of that one 15-14. Albany found a way against the Bandits in Banditland. Very impressive. And finally, Saskatchewan began their revenge season against the defending champs, who might be nursing a championship hangover. The Rush took that one rather easily, 18-6. All right, that's enough looking behind in the past. It's time to look forward to week number 2. And just like we mentioned last week, we were going to put out a poll, and we did, to you guys, the viewers, to help us decide what our Flash game of the week was going to be. And with an overwhelming response coming in at 56%, you guys voted for the game of the week to be the Saskatchewan Rush at San Diego going up against the Seals, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific at Pechanga Arena. And before we get any further in this, it's time to bring in our guest for this week of Lacrosse Flash. You can read his latest article, Flash Stats, on the Lacrosse Flash website, Mr. Ty Merrow. Ty, welcome back to the program. How are you?
I'm good, man. I feel like a plan C right now. So, everything's going pretty good. I'm glad you had Flash Stats on the mind. That's a great way to introduce me this week.
I love that. I love calling you a Plan C. Maybe that'll be a new nickname going forward. But let's roll, shall we? So we saw last week against New York, we saw the Seals put up 15 goals, and we saw the Rush put up 18 of their own against the defending the defending NLL champions, the Colorado Mammoth. So we know offense isn't going to be an issue for either of these two teams. In net is where I want to start off our focus, because for the Seals, they obviously have one of the better, if not one of the best goalies in the league in Frank Chiliano. Then on the other side, we have kind of a 1A, 1B situation with Alex Bouquet and Eric Penny. Ty, who wins this goalie matchup between these two teams?
That's a really tough one. Is this last class? Can I say good question and you get a ding for it? I'm trying to pump up those numbers.
I need them, please.
Good question, Tino. I really don't know on this one. I think Frank Chiliano, it's not really a secret at this point that he's much better at the beginning of the season and then kind of tapers off towards the end. And I don't know if that's due to workload, whatever the deal is. That's just kind of how it's been for a while. Alex Bouquet is a little bit similar. Last season with the Warriors, he started off pretty hot for them and then kind of ended up falling off a little bit there. So I don't know if it's going to end up being the same thing. I really think it's probably even in between that, as much as odd as that sounds like, or it is to hear me say that out loud. I really think the defense are going to be what make their goalies shine in this contest. And I don't think there's any question. Saskatchewan's defense is much better than the Seals at this point, especially after those week 1 performances.
Obviously, the Seals had arguably the biggest offseason with the free agents that they had come into their offense. Plus, their offense was already pretty stacked with guys like Dane Doby and Westberg out there. So I think it's fair to say they pretty much have a 5-headed monster coming out onto the turf for every offensive set. With that in mind, what can Saskatchewan do to try to limit that 5-headed monster as much as possible?
Well, before I get into that, I do think we need to touch on the fact that this should be Austin Stott's first game back. He missed the first one. There was that penalty that he got back in the postseason earlier this year that bled into this year. So he ended up missing a game due to a suspension. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes back into an offense that put up 15 against the Riptide and just how that's going to have an impact there on the chemistry, all that jazz. For the Rush, I think it's just do what they did. You can look at the Mammoth and be like, shell of what they were. There are a lot of guys that were injured. There's still no Ryan Lee. But there were a lot of things that the Rush were doing in that performance that I really liked and I know are repeatable. They were stifling on transition. They would not let the Mammoth run at all. They were excellent on special teams, especially their penalty kill. And then just in the settled game, even strength, they dominated that. Like the Mammoth lost more possessions, had more even strength possessions that nothing happened. They didn't get a shot clock off, they had a shot violation, technical violation, whatever it was. They had the most of those out of any team last week at 34%. So 1 out of 3 of their even strength possessions were absolutely wasted. That Rush team controlled the floor, like from their offensive end to their defensive end. If you weren't wearing green, you were in trouble. And unfortunately for the Seals, I think that's going to be their biggest test starting off early. It's like, it's not so much how is their 5-headed monster going to be stopped. It's like, what can their 5-headed monster do against that nightmare of a defense?
All right, let's give some love to the remaining games going on in week 2. It's a pretty light week. There's only 4 games going on. So 3 others to talk about. On Friday, December 9th, Vegas will be going up against Panther City in Panther City in the this is sort of like the Flint, Michigan Mega Bowl. Hopefully people get that reference, except this is going to be the expansion Mega Bowl. So that one's going at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific at Dickies Arena, like I mentioned before, in Fort Worth. Saturday, December 10th, we have Toronto at Rochester. Rochester coming off that huge win against Georgia. 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific at Blue Cross Arena. Then the second game on Saturday, it's going to be Vancouver at Calgary. That's the TSN game of the week, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific at the Scotiabank Saddle Dome on that iconic WestJet Field turf. So, Ty, with all those games in mind, I want you to put on your salesman hat for a second and sell me on watching one of or all of the remaining games this weekend.
I am a terrible salesperson. I don't know why you put that evil on me. I'm interested in seeing Vegas just because it's Vegas. I love seeing new expansion teams. I'm interested in seeing Panther City. I've loved what that offense did last year. Now they got John Donville. I want to see how they can go. And yeah, it's whatever. It's 2 expansion clubs that are playing each other, but there's a lot of American talent, young talent on that Vegas team that I think is going to shock a lot of people. I'm really interested, like I said, to see Panther City, how they will take that step forward. And if they can show us that last third of their season wasn't an aberration. Toronto and Rochester. Toronto, I want to see how repeatable that performance was. I don't think the Warriors were at their best politely, which we'll touch into a little bit later. So I kind of want to see how much of what they did was the real deal and not just kind of a one-off against a team that hadn't played an exhibition game all November. And then Rochester impressed the hell out of me. I covered that game in person, and just that defense was thick and mean. That offense, which we knew was going to be better, really showed what they can be, especially with Connor Fields out there, how they were controlling their doorstep. Just that was a great performance by them. They absolutely deserve that win. And I'm really interested again to see if that's repeatable for them. Especially like Rylan Hartley coming back from everything that he did. He was robbing Lyle Thompson left and right, like the man owed him money. So it'll be nice to see if, again, just consistency for that game. And then Vancouver and Calgary. Vancouver, I really thought they played a lot better in the final 3 quarters than in the first one. They started to like find that groove, find that comfort and everything. It was still a bad performance. They really need, like, I don't think their offense is so bad that their special teams should appear that pitiful. And then Calgary, it's their first game. I think there's a lot of narrative around them. It's like, hey, you've lost, Dane Doby and Curtis Dixon, over the last 2 off seasons. How are you guys going to handle that? That's a defense first team in my mind. And I'm really interested to see, it's the year of Jesse King. I'm really interested to see how they step forward, just keep it and play Roughnecks lacrosse, mean, gritty. It starts from the back end and works its way out. So yeah, watch them all. Lacrosse is great. Short answer.
Very underrated in your sales skills, Ty, I will say.
You're welcome.
Ty, last one for you here. Cool Bet has the odds set for this weekend, obviously, and they have Panther City, the Seals, the Rock, and the Roughnecks all as the odds-on favorite to win their matchups. In your opinion, of those teams, which of those would you consider to be a lock to win their game?
None of them. I don't agree with the first two at all. I really think, I don't know. Expansion teams don't win their first game, so that's probably a stupid bet of mine. But I think Vegas is going to be pretty impressive coming out the gate, especially with just how young and athletic and talented they are. That just feels like one of those you go in and it's like, oh, it's an expansion team. You're supposed to win, and you get punched in the mouth. And all of a sudden you find yourself looking up with your chin bleeding. Same thing with the Seals. I think Sask is going to win that game just because the rush looks so damn good. I really can't undersell that. Like, whatever, it's week 1. You really shouldn't be putting too much stock one way or the other into performances, except for the rush. That was a really damn good win. God, they're scary. I do think the Rock probably have the best odds out of winning all of them, but the Nighthawks, I don't think you can go in there expecting them to be a cakewalk opponent. I'm not saying that's what the Swarm did, but I think the Swarm, they looked really discombobulated for 45 minutes out of that entire game. I don't know if maybe they weren't expecting the Nighthawks to be as good as they were, but a team that's letting Connor Fields do whatever damage that he wants to do, and Rylan Hartley, if he stands on his head, it wouldn't surprise me if they once again started the season 2-0.
With the amount that Rylan Hartley is doing the splits, I don't know how much he can quite literally stand on his head, but that's a conversation for another day, whatever. Ty, thank you very much for joining us for the second regular season episode of the NLL Flash. Again, you can see all of Ty's work on Lacrosse Flash. His latest article, Flash Stats, Key Stats explaining the 2022-23 opening weekend, is up there for you to read. It's very good. Please go check it out as much as you want. Tell your friends. So for Ty Merrow, Ty Plan C Merrow, that is, and myself, Tino Fera, thank you very much for watching another episode of the NLL Flash.